how often do we just stop and breathe and just be in the moment and play? Watching lion cubs playing, it's just fascinating. They're totally in the moment, just like children.
Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, I interview peak performing innovators in the creative, social impact, and earth conservation spaces who are working to change the world. This episode is brought to you by Brain FM. Brain FM combines the best of music and neuroscience to help you relax, focus, meditate, and even sleep. I love it and have been using it to write, create, and do some of my deepest work. Because you're a listener of the show, you can get a free trial. Head over to brain.fm/innovative mindset to check it out. If you decide to subscribe, you can get 20% off with the coupon code Innovative Mindset, all one word. And now, let's get to the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I am super happy that you're here, and I'm also incredibly honored and thrilled and happy to share with you this week's guest. She is fabulous. Lisa Roberti, the Safari Girl, has been traveling to wildlife-rich areas around the world for over 27 years. While not a professional photographer, her goal is to use her photographs and experiences about her travels to encourage others to travel so that together we can preserve the wild places for generations to come. Lisa has a wildlife-themed online store and is currently writing her first book called Safari Tales. I can't wait to read it. She also has a self-study course on how to plan your safari to get the trip of a lifetime. Lisa, I'm so grateful that you're here. Thanks so much for being here.
Isolde, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on your show. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. First of all, I love, ever since somebody gave me, my parents gave me a Kodak Extra 1 for my 12th birthday, I have been an avid photographer and I love taking all sorts of photos. And I'm wondering, for you, what got you started in photography and having photography be your way of getting the message out, your message out, and the message for animals and the natural and wild places?
So when I was really young, I was in about fifth grade. I've always had a passion for animals. I've always loved animals. And the camera was just a way to get closer, to like really watch and see and look at behavior, and then also to share it with people. You could tell stories, but they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and video also. And it was just really my way to get closer and to experience and remember with detail everything that I got to experience with animals.
That's so amazing. I love that you said that it was a way to experience the animals. And yet there's this wonderful sort of quote or meme that says, take only photographs, leave only footprints. So the experience doesn't sound like it is diminished at all if you don't have any other contact with the animals other than being the photographer.
Oh, Isolde, I'm so glad you said that. Wildlife photographers can really get a bad name. There's so many out there that their main goal is the photograph, whereas my main goal is to witness and record natural behaviors of the animals.
Yes.
You see a lot of photographers out there. I'm glad to say it's not the majority, but there's a few that they will really harass the animal in order to get quote unquote the picture. They want to get a reaction. They want to get a whatever. And to me, that's just harassment, and it's not good, clean wildlife photography. I am there to witness and report. I'm there to see natural behavior. Like, what is their life without humans in the way? And to me, that is what's so beautiful. And there's so much to learn from animals, and watching their behavior and just and watching them interact with other species and within their own species. It's amazing to watch it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And that brings me to a question. What have you learned? You say there's so much to learn. I agree with you. I'm sort of, I feel a little bit like I'm going to be like, yes, this whole chat. And yet you've got obviously a lot more experience than I do photographing wildlife in the wild. What has been the biggest lesson that you've learned from observing and from having those experiences with animals in the wild?
So the biggest experience, that's a hard one. I would say that for me, observing them, you see that they all have personalities. Like we tend to put them in a bubble, right?
Mm.
This is lion behavior, this is elephant behavior, this is, but each animal has its own unique personality. And they all have stories. I've been privileged to go back to the same locations time and time again, where I've been able to see the animals and watch them grow up, if you will, and know them by their human, English names. And it's just fascinating to see them have their own personalities, living in the moment. You see the tenderness, you see the fierceness, you see them just being raw. And it's such a reminder. We, in our lives as human beings, where we have the cell phone binging and we have so much going on, and how often do we just stop and breathe and just be in the moment and play? Or watching lion cubs playing, it's just fascinating. They're totally in the moment. It's just like children. Like, they don't have the phones binging. They don't have the responsibilities to worry about. And I think as we grow up and as we adult, we lose that. And watching animals and just watching them in their natural environments, and seeing their triumphs and their failures, and yeah, it's hard to put into words. I hope I did an okay job there.
You did great. It is interesting to me that there are times there was a I don't know if you remember the movie A Fish Called Wanda. Did you ever see that movie with John Cleese and Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Kline? Did you ever see that movie?
I do not. I have not
That's
seen it.
no
No.
worries, no
Yeah.
worries. The movie itself is wonderful, fabulous. Kevin Kline won the Oscar, and there was a sort of a kind of a sequel using the same actors. They did another movie, and it was called Fierce Creatures, and it was about a zoo. And
Mm.
this woman came in to sort of make the zoo more efficient, and there was a gorilla at the zoo, and she had this incredible experience of just seeing the gorilla as
Mm.
another being on the planet, and the people who are in the zoo who are desperately trying to save the zoo, which was supposed to be a very sort of humanitarian zoo, whatever. But they looked at each other and they went, she's gotten it. She understands now that is something she didn't know before, that she couldn't have known before she had that experience of connection. And so that makes me think of what you were talking about, that it's hard to explain that connective moment
Mhm.
between us seeing animals in the wild and understanding their inherent value. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how we could increase those experiences, or make them more accessible to people, so that more people understand the inherent value of the other beings we share the planet with.
That, yeah, and that's exactly what my mission is. I After COVID, so I've been, traveling to Africa and taking photographs for 20 something years, 27 years, and I really haven't done anything with them. And after COVID happened and tourism got shut down, I became aware of all of the problems in the wild places. How much poaching increased, how much the land grabbing was happening, and how we were losing more and more wild places, because without tourism, the value of the land to the locals went down.
Mm.
Tourism brings jobs to the local people.
Mm-hmm.
They have jobs in lodges, they have chefs, they have mechanics, they have rangers, they have, and the tourism money also pays for rangers. So there was a lot more poaching, and there was a lot more, um, like I said, the human wildlife conflict, because the value had gone down to the local people.
Mm.
It wasn't bringing in money anymore. And so, as a safari goer, as a person who loves to go to wild places and loves to be with the animals, I've decided to, I'm using now my photographs and my stories to try and get people to see how amazing it is to go, whether it's Africa or somewhere closer to home, to these wild places to support them. It has to be sustainable. I mean, we don't want to like destroy them with so many thousands and thousands of tourists. It has to be a sustainable practice, but people tourism brings value to the land, and it brings value to the people
Mm-hmm.
that are living around these beautiful wild places. And so I'm actually working right now on a interactive guide to help people plan their safaris. And the reason I'm doing that again is I'm really hoping that if people want to go on safari and they can plan a safari that meets their expectations, and they go and they love it, and they're just so enthralled by it, and they're going to come home and they're going to tell other people, and that way we can really preserve wild places and preserve the value for everybody. I can't even imagine a world where there's no wild elephants or wild lions, and we're getting there. I mean, we're really getting there. These animals are disappearing at unknown, I mean, just such a fast space. And I tell everybody I talk to, I'm like, if you really want to see wild animals in the wild, you have to go, and you have to go now. And the more people, I believe, the more people who go and get to experience that amazing, like seeing what it really is, like seeing life how it is for these creatures, that they will gain value, and people will understand the incredible value they have on them, the planet, the world, everything. And I think, there's a lot of really great places out there that are doing a great job. I mean, there's so many TV channels that you can find beautiful documentaries about these beautiful sentient beings, and so you can get it. It's there, and people are beginning to see it, and there's so much more. There's so much more activity going on to save these animals now, which is fabulous. But me personally, I think actually being there in person is so different than watching it on your TV screen. It's just smelling the smells and hearing the sounds and seeing these creatures and watching their lives unfold before your eyes. It's just, it's just an experience that stays with you and gets into your soul for life.
I'm taking all of that in for a second. Yes, yes. See, this is me going, yes, yes, Lisa, keep going. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. I remember when I was in South Africa, and we went on a photo safari, and we were in this little mini van, and we
Mm.
pulled into this little, it was almost like a natural driveway. It was this little natural sort of bordered uh drive-in, if you will, where I guess they took people a lot. And there were a couple of prides of lions hanging out. And first of all, I found out male lions kind of lazy, that's for sure. They but what was really interesting, and I'm gonna I have a question in here somewhere, but it was really interesting to see what the lionesses did. They started walking around our little van, just circling around it and circling around it, and one of them went and laid down behind the little minivan, and there was no way for us to leave. And we were all
Mhm.
going, and they're thinking, you've got to run out of gas sometime, and it was really interesting because and our driver was like, it's going to be fine, she'll move, everything will be fine. And of course it was. But what it did for me is it really made me go, I am in a different place now, and it gave me this wonderful moment of awareness of my role. You know what I mean? Because I am not the king of the jungle. People are not the kings of the it was very eye-opening, like, oh yeah, it's sort of like your place in the universe kind of situation. So I'm wondering, when you are out on safari and you're having these incredible experiences, How do you feel? You've said that they're magnificent and amazing, but how do you feel when you are there in that moment, observing and photographing these incredible beings?
Gosh, I've had so many incredible experiences. I've seen births. I've seen animals take their first steps. I've seen animals fighting for their lives. I've seen so many things, and it's every moment is just a moment of wonder and awe. And you would think I've spent over 40 weeks just in Africa, in wildlife rich areas in Africa, plus all over other places around the world. And I'm still in awe. I'm still in wonder. I don't get bored. You see different things all the time. You see it, you just, I feel like I feel so special to be able to witness these lives, to actually to be there, to see what's happening. I've cried tears of joy and tears of sorrow. And I'm not going to say you've never seen it all, right, in nature, but I've seen so many things. And even watching, like you said, a coalition of male lions laying under a tree in the shade, sleeping, and even just watching them breathing. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just this huge 1,000-pound animal laying right there, like 10 feet away from you, while you're safely in your vehicle, and that's just life for them. And you wonder, you're like, what is he dreaming about? What is he thinking about? And it's crazy, but it's just amazing. And then when you see, and I don't want to get into the sad stories, but I witnessed something that was incredibly sad. We had been following a very young lion cub and his pride for days and days and days. And then I witnessed him being killed by a herd of buffalo.
Oh.
And you see the mother lioness. And I mean, it was a herd of probably 1,000 buffalo. And this lioness was trying so hard to get to her cub, and the cub was just too small. It couldn't run away in time. And to watch this lioness and trying to get in there and trying to protect her cub, and watching this defenseless little creature being killed. And it's nature, and it's sad, and I'm crying, I'm bawling my eyes out. I couldn't even take pictures because it was like, this was one of my earlier trips, and I'm like, I just couldn't do it. And then after finally, the herd of buffalo finally scattered, and the mom lioness, she kept searching and searching and searching for her cub, and she finally found the lifeless body. And again, I don't mean to get into a sad story, but it's part of seeing that these animals, and this is probably going to raise a lot of people's hair on the back of their necks, they have emotions, they care. The looks on her face, her behavior when she found her dead cub, it was heartbreaking. It was and just to witness that and to see the lives of these animals, and again, this was all nature, it wasn't human impacted at all. And to see that the vulnerabilities they have, and then to witness the other side though too. Like, I've seen animals being born, I've seen animals taking their first steps, and it's just it's so incredible. I don't even remember what your question was because I went off on a tangent, but and I'm just so into the moment, and it's just it's an experience that goes into your soul that stays with you forever. And even if it's just, like I said, lions sleeping under a shade tree, or witnessing something so intense like that, or witnessing, I know everybody wants to see a kill or a hunt or whatever, and it doesn't have to be that intense. It's just every part of their lives. You see how every moment it's a life and death moment for these beings. And, you know, as humans, as humans in America, most of us don't live that way. I know there are some times where there is, but you know, we live sheltered lives. Or I should say because I know there are people on the planet, humans on the planet, and especially right now, that are fighting for their lives. But there's so many of us that, you know, we get up, we go to work, we go to the grocery store, and we don't think about life and death. And when you're there and you're witnessing it, and you're seeing these animals, the prey and the predators, fighting every moment of their lives for survival, but also having empathy, seeing elephants grieving over a lost one and just mourning skulls of long lost elephants that they probably didn't even know. I mean, there's so many levels there's so much depth to every being, and you have to see it, I think, to really appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Wow. Wow. And yes, you shared a sad story, but it was such a profound one. And it's true. I mean, even just looking at my domestic kitties at home, they have emotions. Obviously they have emotions. They are thinking and feeling beings, and there's no doubt in my mind that every animal has that same level of sentience. The thing that I personally struggle with is how do we raise that? I know you said, and by that I mean awareness. I know you said you have to experience it, but let's face it. Most of us here in the USA, at least, aren't going to go on safari. It would be cool if we could, but what else? What innovative ways could we experience this kind of connection that you're talking about, or close to it?
Go to the park. Go, you know, watch your animals, watch your pets, like you said, is all that. Like, even a lot of people have pets, but a lot of people don't really see their pets. They don't really see, like, we are their life. We are their entire life. Like, when you leave and you come back and they're so excited to see you, you know, it's because we have we have phone calls to people, and we have all these other things, and the animals, they just have us. And sometimes we forget that. And you could just look at your kitty or your dog, or go to the park and just observe birds even. Or if you're lucky enough to live somewhere where there's fox or some other type of wildlife that you can safely observe. Birds are probably the easiest in suburbia. But you could I have a bird feeder. And again, that might raise hair on some people's necks, thinking that, you know, some people think that bird feeders are bad, but I have a bird feeder right outside of my office. And it's fascinating to watch the behavior at the feeder. And you just can learn so much about, and I can't pick out individual birds. I mean, I know species and stuff, but like I wouldn't know, oh, this is the one that was here yesterday. I can't do that. But like just watching them and taking a moment to stop all the noise and just breathe and take in nature just really puts you in a different space. It brings you peace. It brings you, like, stopping for a moment, like stop and smell the roses, right? Just stop and be in nature. And you can do that almost anywhere in the world. And again, there's a lot of places you can't, but you know, in the United States especially, I mean, even big cities have parks, you know, and you could go to the park, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a backyard, you know, just sit in your backyard and just take a few moments to breathe, to hear, to listen, to smell, you know, listening to the birds, listening to the cicadas right now, you know. It really, if you just breathe it in and take a moment to just be and forget about all the noise around you, meaning human noise, like all your to-do list and everything you have to do, and to just enjoy the beautiful beauty of Mother Nature.
Yes. See, again, yes, 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 absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. I talk to my clients about that when I'm doing coaching. We talk a lot about going for walks. That's a big one.
Mhm.
Go for walks and don't just look down. Look up, see what else is there, say hello to the trees, all of those sorts of
Yes.
things. It,
Yes.
it's so, see, we're mutual admiration society, Lisa. I like that. So all of that is really good as far as bringing awareness. How do we bring awareness? And it can start small. I agree with you. Go outside, breathe, look up, look at the critters, look at the plants, look at the trees. Spend some time in nature when we don't anymore. So many of us, I think we passed the tipping point relatively recently where more of us live in urban areas than live in non-urban areas all over the planet, which is amazing because that's a lot of planet. And so the question that I have for you is, going out for a walk is great. Starting to build that awareness is terrific. If I am at that place, if I've gone for my walks and I've figured out that this is something I want more of, because what happens, I notice with people, is that they go, oh, this is cool. I want more.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what's the next step for someone who in your opinion, since you spent so much time traveling to these wild places, what's the next step for someone who's like, okay, I've got this awareness and now I want to do something else. They may not have a lot of money, but something. What would you suggest someone do if they want to increase that connection?
So there's a two-part answer here.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to do it for their own enjoyment, um, there in most places, again around the United States, you could take a Saturday afternoon and do some just Google homework about beautiful, bigger parks that are around, or hiking areas that are around within it, and take a day trip, or half a day trip. I live in the cornfields, and I haven't even seen a squirrel. I've lived here for 2 years, and I've never even seen a squirrel.
Hmm.
But within a couple hour drive, I can get to some beautiful areas, and hike, and that doesn't cost any money, or very little money, if there might be an entrance fee for the park.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in the United States, we have some beautiful national parks
Mm-hmm.
that people can go to, and that, if it requires traveling in hotel stays, of course that's going to add um, an expense. But there's a lot of things you can do that don't, and that's part one of how do you get enjoyment out of it. Part two, to learn more and everything, is to start getting involved, and be aware of laws that are coming into play, that protect animals. Even, on cold, rainy, when winter comes and it's dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there's great documentaries about animals and wild places, and that you can watch and immerse yourself that way. There's a website that I would love to share. It's called explore.org, where they have live cams from all over the world.
Mm.
And you can, and it's not only wildlife, they even have like, where they're breeding puppies, for service dogs, and you can
Mm.
see the puppies being bred for service dogs. And it's an amazing, um, non-for-profit that's trying to help people connect, that can't maybe go to Africa or Alaska or Costa Rica, or any of these beautiful places. um, and it's and you can get lost, and you can see it, and it's amazing. But I would say the more you can get outside, just even around your house, the more connected you'll feel, and the more at peace too.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, during COVID times, that was one of the things that saved me, was being able to step
Mm-hmm.
outside, because you do go a little stir crazy when you're stuck indoors. So, and it doesn't have to be around a lot of people. If you can just go for a solo walk or something like that, is amazing. And yet there's so much awareness we can build and so much appreciation we can build. And now, honestly, I want to go to the next step. So let's say you've watched all the documentaries, you've read books, you've done let's say you want to go on a safari. What
Mm.
is a safari? What I know what I did. We went on a day trip, but I was there for work for NASA, so I wasn't on a safari. We just went on a day trip to see lions and hyenas and zebras. So it wasn't quite the same. But when someone says a safari, what are they saying, and how does one do that? What do you do to go on safari, and what is it?
So great question. Usually people talk about safaris in terms of Africa. You can go to wildlife rich places anywhere in the world. Alaska happens to be one of my favorite places. But when people talk about safari, it's usually going to one of 9 to 11 countries in Africa. And I've been to 7
Mm-hmm.
safari rich places in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people would be really surprised to understand the amount of diversity of things that you can do when you go to Africa. Because a lot of people, and even my sister, I took her on safari and now she is absolutely hooked. She was
Mm-hmm.
like, I think it might be boring just to drive around and look at animals. And then she went and she can't get enough. Now
Right.
I think she's leaving in a couple of weeks for her 3rd safari.
I love
But
it.
you can do, so first of all, there's cultural. So you can do cultural visits and
Mm-hmm.
learn about the cultures. You can do conservation, where you learn about human wildlife conflict and what's being done to help prevent that. You can do traditional safari, would be where you're in a vehicle and you're driving around and you're stopping and you're looking at animals and watching behavior. You can do walking safaris. You can do balloon safaris. You can do horseback safaris. You can go on, in some places, you can go on ATVs. You can go fishing. You can, like, if you go to East Africa, you can do part safari, part beach. You can do whale watching. If you're in Southern Africa, you can tie a safari with wineries and wine businesses in Cape Town. So I think there's such a diversity of things that you can actually do on safari, and that's actually why I created this planner that I've created. I mean, it's to help people realize all the opportunities and help them kind of narrow down what they actually really want on safari. The other thing too is there's so many different places to go and so many different seasons, and what do you really want to see as far as animal life? Because if you really want to see a rhino, there's certain places you can go where your opportunity is much greater to see a rhino than if you go to other places. And of course, it's nature, so you're never guaranteed any sighting, but there's places where you can go where you really raise the opportunity or the possibility of seeing what you want to see. And so I created this planner to kind of talk about all these different things. And also the other thing is, a lot of people, have a Four Seasons dream, but they have a Best Western budget. And
Mm-hmm.
what do you do if you have that, if you're upside down in what you really want to do and what you can afford, and how do you then not be disappointed? And so just things like that. I discussed that. And then what if you have mobility issues or special eating requirements? How do you get around that? And then also, just right now, traveling during COVID, I've been on safari multiple times throughout COVID. I've been to Africa, Alaska, and other places, and it's doable, but it's challenging, and you need to know what to look for to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you can navigate through, and that you don't get stuck somewhere because you don't have the right tests or you don't have the right documentation. So there's actually a lot to go into it, but it's fun. Planning the safari should be exciting and fun and something to look forward to. It's part of the journey. Obviously, the best part is actually being there, but it's part of the journey of getting to live your dream. I remember I had always dreamed of seeing animals in the wild. I, went to the zoos and everything, and I thought, oh my God, how amazing would it be? And when I first started planning my first safari, it was oh God, it was like the dream finally coming true. And it was so exciting to look at all the different opportunities and to see all the different ideas and the things that you could do. And yeah, so that's, and then finding reputable companies to work with. Um, there, I've heard of a lot of disaster stories of people, and it's easy when you know what to look for.
Cool. I want to go on a safari again. That's cool. Yeah, and it is so interesting to me. I love Alaska also. I've been, and it's in many ways it's like a it's just it's so different than anywhere else I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm looking at this, when I'm thinking about, oh, I want to plan my safari and I want to go travel and I want to see wild places, how do we do it consciously? How do we what do we need to do to, like I said, take only photographs, leave only footprints?
Mm-hmm.
If so, I guess that's like an ecotourism thing. What are your thoughts on that? What innovative ways could we, as people who want to go on safari, to commune with nature and to be and observe these animals and nature wherever we go, how do we do it responsibly?
Great, great question. And that all ties into the company and the lodges. There's a lot of choices out there when you go on safari. I just picked up like a safari magazine, and it's just pages and pages and pages of advertisements for different companies and different lodges and different everything. And with the internet now, you can really do a lot of research and find the lodges that are eco-friendly, that are doing the right thing. You can, like, there's conservancies out there where they really limit the number of people to make sure that there's not so many people in a small area, so that the wild places are staying pristine.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that. There's a lot of mass tourism places, and then there's the eco-friendly places. And one thing that most of these countries in Africa have done actually better than first world countries is most of them now have like outlawed single-use plastic, and things like the United States is not even talking about doing that.
Right.
And so just even supporting these countries and what they're doing is a big step. But yes, there are eco-friendly lodges that where you go in, or you can, like I said, you can do the research, and they tell you about all the steps that they're doing to recycle, reuse, the water systems they have, the purification systems they have, to make the least amount of impact on the land as possible. And those types of places, they're becoming more and more and more. It used to be few and far between, but now that people are becoming more aware of the environment, that's a big selling point for a lot of these places.
I love
It's
hearing that.
also,
Oh,
sorry,
go
it's
ahead.
also, I'm sorry, it's also your, like if you do decide to go travel with a group, or you decide to go on your own, who the company that you book with, whether you book direct through lodges or you book through Africa specialist, there's different levels there too, where some of them are more concerned about that, and then others are more concerned about just pushing lots of people through.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can tell, if you're familiar with eco-friendly anything, as you're reviewing and previewing, you can see what they're doing for eco-friendly. They'll offer carbon offset. I know even United Airlines is doing carbon offset now. They will, yeah, and they'll talk about it, because that's a big point for a lot of people. So it's out there. It's a little bit harder to find. It's becoming easier and easier to find. But even like I said, these countries, even stopping single-use plastic, they are trying really hard to preserve and make their countries more beautiful and pristine.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear that. It really does. I mean, because I worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not. I'm not trying to insult any developing nations or anything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to be sure, as as a vegan, as someone who tries to be very eco-conscious, I want to again leave the smallest footprint possible. So that's something that we can do is we can look for these eco-friendly and environmentally conscious places to stay or trips to take, and I think that that's amazing. So what's the number one piece of advice you have for someone going? What's the thing that they absolutely either need to know or need to do?
I think they need, I think the biggest thing that I've seen and heard is for them to really understand what they want. What do you really want out of the safari? What is your dream? What are you, when you close your eyes and you're like, oh, I want to go on safari. I can't wait to go on safari. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
And then making sure that what you book matches that or exceeds that. And that's where booking with somebody with a lot of Africa experience is critical, because you may have these beautiful visions in your mind. Like you want responsible tourism. You want minimal impact. Can you imagine if that was what your goal and idea was, and then you get there and you're in a lodge that's got 200 rooms and it's just waste everywhere? Like, that would be devastating to you. So really understanding what it is that is important to you, what your dream is, and then making sure that your booking matches that and exceeds that, so that when you go, it's everything you've dreamt about, and so much more and so much better.
I love that. And I have a tough question for you right now
Mm,
because that part was great. The part that I get concerned about is
mm,
what we can do. Some of the practices that I have read about and heard about are abusive to the wildlife, and and sort of tourists, like elephants painting or
mm.
or any they can't that can't be real. That can't be something that is the elephant went, you know what, I'm going to grab a paintbrush and I'm going to paint a cat. I cannot imagine that that's something the elephant decided that she wanted to do. So how do we, do we vote with our dollars? How do we avoid practices that could be abusive to the very animals we want to see and protect?
Awesome question. Thank you so much for bringing this up, because this is something I talk about all the time. So almost any experience where, and I'm going to say almost because this is not 100% true, and I'll explain the caveats. So almost any experience where you can be hands-on with an animal is led with abuse. So, and in South Africa, and this is changing, thank God they're changing the laws over there. In South Africa, they used to have this thing where they would get tourists to pay big money to come and raise the orphaned lion cubs so that they can return them into the wild, where what they're actually doing is they're raising these cubs, they're getting money income from the tourists paying to play with these cubs, and then when the cubs got big enough, then they would go into canned hunts and they'd be slaughtered. And of course, they
Mm,
weren't telling the people that. There's
right.
also opportunities where you can walk with cheetahs. And again, that these animals are abused and tortured in order to be tame, quote unquote, enough to do that. Paintbrushing with elephants, or painting the elephants, painting or playing basketball. The, the pictures I have seen and the stories of the abuse that these animals endure, the whippings, the everything that they go through to learn and to hold a paintbrush and to do these things. And and of course there it's being touted as a sanctuary, and it's just not anything that it, if you ever see an animal doing something that it is not in its normal repertoire, it's been abused to do that. And I say almost always there are several places that where you do have opportunity to be a little bit more close, where it truly is a sanctuary and these animals aren't abused. One is Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. Roberti also has one in Samburu, and it's again elephants, where they take orphaned baby elephants, and the elephants are orphaned due to poaching, human wildlife conflict, or natural deaths, and they raise these babies and then they reintroduce them into the wild, and they have this huge success. And in order to raise money, they do allow people to come and view the babies.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's it in one hand you're like, oh, is this one of those bad things, or is this one of those good things? And it's sometimes, even for me, I have to do a lot of research to make sure that I'm only supporting the ones that are actually doing good work.
Mm-hmm.
And Sheldrick Wildlife Trust is one in Nairobi, Kenya. And then Giraffe Center is another one where you can actually feed the giraffes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my normal checklist, that would be an absolute no. But because I did the research and I did the homework to know that these are wild giraffes, they're accustomed to people. It's a giraffe subspecies that's very endangered, Rothschild giraffe, that they had brought in to try and repopulate them, and they do reintroduce them back into the wild. And it's like, what steps are they taking? What measures are they taking to make sure they're not getting too used to humans, and that we aren't impacting their normal lives? Like, it's not normal for a human to feed a giraffe. So
Right.
like, where is that line? And in some places, the line is a little blurry, like Giraffe Center, because they're doing really good work. The animals are not abused. In other places, it's so crystal clear that this is just bad. And such a case as, like you pointed out, the elephants that are painting, like, they are just absolutely abused. They're performing things they don't normally perform.
Exactly.
When you're feeding the giraffe at Giraffe Center, they're eating like they would normally eat. They're reaching out with their tongue and they're grabbing it as if it were a leaf on a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not doing something that's abnormal. Taking it out of a human hand, yeah, that's abnormal. Versus an elephant, holding a paintbrush and painting strokes. That's just not normal behavior.
For
So
sure.
it's yeah. And I've had to research. There's a elephant sanctuary in Indonesia that I'm interested in and visiting, but I'm still on the fence about whether this is a true sanctuary or not. And I'm trying to do a lot more research, and sometimes it's really hard to know. And of course, we don't want to contribute to abuse of any kind.
Completely and absolutely, totally, and for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for sure. And it's interesting. Many years ago, I was a volunteer at the National Zoo for the Golden Lion Tamarin Project, and it was reintroducing them into the wild, and they weren't in cages, right? So our job was to sort of make sure that that where they were was okay for them to be, and we would sort of leave food where they might find it, but they weren't in cages. They were above people's heads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sort of running around in the trees and along the ropes and things like that, to get them to be used to being outside so that they could be reintroduced back into the wild in South America. What was interesting about that is how much, and I'm not a zoo fan, I will be very honest. I do not like zoos. Animals don't belong in cages. That I have to say. But being part of that project for me was eye-opening, because the individual people I was working with cared so very much about making sure that these endangered beings would have a real chance at living in the wild. And that's something that we have to remember, that as soon as they are in connection with human beings, that changes. And so I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on rehabilitation, or no, reintroduction, I guess I would say, of animals back into the wild, can that happen in a way that is really safe and good for them? And how do we weigh that if not doing the rehabilitation and helping them would just end up in their deaths?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust out of Nairobi. They have successfully, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. They have successfully reintroduced, I think it's over 100 elephants.
Mm.
And the success stories are incredible because, again, they take them when they're babies. They stay in Nairobi National Park. When they get, Nairobi National Park doesn't have elephants. It's too small.
Mm-hmm.
But they have these baby elephants that are cared for by humans. And then when they get big, they bring them into, they have 3 different reintegration units. And then they slowly reintegrate themselves into the wild herds. And again, there's people taking care of them, making sure they're being fed, making sure they're being cared for. And then the wild herds come in and they slowly, and some of them can take 10, 15 years before they actually become wild. And it's amazing because now they've had females that have been reintroduced in the wild who have gone off into wild herds, actually having babies with wild elephants. And because they supply water sources, a lot of times they will come back. And it's really interesting. And again, this is a huge success story. They've actually had, and again, it goes to the intelligence of wild animals. They've actually had a wild bull who was mating with one of the ex-orphan females, was speared, and 2 of his bull buddies, so his 3 male bull elephants actually came into the reintroduction unit looking for help.
Wow.
And of course they were cared for and everything by the veterinarian staff there. So in some cases that reintroduction, it's phenomenal. And they've shown it time and time again, like with elephants, it's possible. With the monkeys, hopefully that the tamarins, hopefully that was a success story and that they were able to do that. Mm-hmm. They've done it with eagles. They've done it. The ones that I've never heard a success story of is predators. Because how do you take a cub and teach it how to hunt? How do you take a cub and teach it how to hide? How do you take, and I've never heard of a successful, well, actually that's not true. Gosh, there's the famous story, and I'm drawing a total blank right now. How can I? About the man and wife who rescued the 3 lions, the cubs.
Oh yeah.
Born free.
Yes.
Yeah. And they successfully reintroduced them into the wild. And man, it took them a long time to do that. So I think, gosh, the more wild animals that are impacted by human wildlife conflict that we can save and bring back into the wild, those people, they have hearts of gold and they work their tails off and they're so passionate. And I would love to be involved with something like that. Did I answer your question?
Yes. No, you absolutely did. It's really, that notion of how we can participate, but do so in a non-invasive way to help these endangered beings that wouldn't be endangered if not for us anyway, is something that I need to go further. I need to personally, I need to look at that more. How can we do that in a non-invasive way so that we're helping and not hurting the wild places and the wild beings that are on those places or in those places, and I think their names were was it the Adamsons, George and for Born Free, and there are other people who spend their lives dedicated to preserving these wild places and helping animals. So it's not hopeless, but wow, we I think we all could do more to participate in helping especially since there are people out there who are participating in hurting those places,
Mm-hmm.
so and those
Mm-hmm.
animals. So we, and do you have any recommendations about if somebody wants to get involved and help? Do you know of any places that someone could go, you know what, I would like to get involved in a reputable place that's working to preserve wild places? Could be in the USA, could be in other places, doesn't matter. Where would you send someone?
So a lot of these, and this is where it gets really kitschy again, because a lot of the places, they can't just take regular volunteers, like people, untrained people. Um, there's a lot of reasons for that. One, I'm going to use Sheldricks again because they are such a success story. So they don't want the elephants getting used to people.
Mm-hmm.
They get used to their handlers, their keepers. Um, and they wear specific jackets, specific coats. They all wear the same style and color of coat. They wear the same clothes. They wear the same. So the elephants aren't necessarily making a generalization about humans. So they don't allow volunteers. And as a person who wants to, it's like, oh, come on, but I'm a good person. Just let me come and help. But for the safety and the sake of the animals, they can't do that. And there are places that will allow you to volunteer. And there's a couple companies, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name off the top of my head. There are a couple companies that actually set up volunteering travel where you actually go and you volunteer. And a lot of them are more for like kids, like schools, like where you can go and volunteer at schools, which is also imperative because these children, if they grow up to see the value of the wildlife and the wild places, they're going to help preserve it, right? So
Mm.
that part is really also very important. But there's not a lot of hands-on true animal volunteering in really wild places like Africa, Alaska, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't prevent people from getting involved at home. um, there's some great opportunities, like even just like preserving parks, keeping the parks clean, volunteering at animal shelters, um, doing that kind of work. It's hard work and it can be heartbreaking, but it's so rewarding as well. And just, let's start with, and again, I'm a huge Africa uh, lover, but sometimes we got to start at home too. Like, what can you do at your park across the street or across town? Is there something that can be done to help preserve that? Let's do a trash cleanup day. Let's do and there's lots of volunteering opportunities at animal shelters. But there are a few in Africa that you can find, but they're not as wide as it would be nice if they were, just because, again, for the safety of the animals, they can't just open it up to people.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that the notion of I'm going to go volunteer with animals, that's something that would take a lot of study, and you'd have to spend a long time getting prepared for that. But there are people, if they have a passion for it, that do pursue something
Mm-hmm.
like that and can eventually. And I think you're absolutely right, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. This notion that we can do something here, you can do something in your backyard, you can do something in the park, you can do something in the animal shelter. There are lots of ways to participate in elevating awareness and in helping that don't necessarily mean you get on a plane and go to another place. You could
Mm-hmm.
do it across town or even across the street. So your point is well made and well taken. Lisa, I really appreciate you saying that because yeah, I think we can do it. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture to be a really important one anyway.
Well, it's like they say, and I don't remember exactly how the proverb goes, if that's the right word, with, walking down the beach and you're throwing one
No.
starfish in when there's 1,000 starfish, and it's like you can't save them all, but that one act is really important to the one that you did save.
Right, exactly. And the last
So
line of that story is it made a difference to that one.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that
exactly.
story. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I could keep you here for the next, I don't know how long, because this is fantastic. And I really appreciate you taking the time, Lisa. And I do know that you have a life to get back to. So I was wondering if, you're doing this document for all of the for people who want to plan a safari, which I think is great, but also if people want to see your photographs and learn more about the work you're doing, would you mind sharing your social channels? Where could someone who wants to go find you find you?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and it's Lisa M as in Mary, just the initial Lisa M Roberti, Roberti. I also have a YouTube channel that I'm just starting out, but because I don't have enough followers, I don't have my pen name yet. But you can just search for me there. And in there, I do a lot of different travel stuff and lodge reviews and things like that. And I'm just starting on that. I also have a Facebook group called Wildlife Travel and Conservation. And that's a place where I talk about animal conservation, laws that are coming up, winds, devastations, and also talk all things travel to wildlife rich places around the world. It's not just Africa, but it's everywhere.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm going to put all of that along with some of Lisa's fabulous photographs on the show notes page. You're going to want to check that out for sure, and learn more about the incredible work Lisa's doing, and just see the photos. They're so beautiful. I love them. You sent them to me and I'm like, these are awesome. So thanks. And you have a really amazing eye. I really just you are able to capture such life and such spirit in every photograph that I've seen you take. Is wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because I can't go necessarily to Africa, but boy, I'm gonna watch you go. So I know that's kind of silly, because I'm gonna go to Africa again for sure, and Costa Rica, and I want to go back to Alaska. There's so many places, many places to go, but I want to always try to do it responsibly, and with enough money to actually go. That's always a good thing. So I have just one question that I ask everybody who listens to the show.
I know.
You know the question. That's right. You listen to the podcast. So
yes.
everyone who comes on the podcast knows this question, hears this question. So here it is. If you had one thing that you wanted to say, because you had an airplane. See, and because I'm not thinking about it, I said it wrong. If you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
I knew this question was coming, and I'm like, and I'm like, what's the few words? Because it's behind an airplane. So, it's got to be short. It's succinct. And I'm like, okay, so really the quick, short, spend time in nature.
I love that.
It's simple. It's so important. And it really, I think the more people spend time in nature, the more people will love it. And then people are going to want to preserve it just because they're in it and they love it so much.
That's a great, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you will. I mean, the second you spend time breathing chlorophyll rich air because you're out near trees, it's going to change you. So I love that. Wow. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. I am so grateful that you took the time to be here, and I'm super excited for people to learn more about you and more about your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure chatting with you, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
It was all my pleasure. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast. You obviously need to go check out Lisa Roberti and her amazing work and all of the wild places she talked about. Eventually, I think you should do that too. If you're liking the show, do me a favor, tell a friend about the show, and tell a friend about all of the cool, innovative stuff we're talking about. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast, reminding you to listen, learn, laugh, and love a whole lot. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new. And if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.